Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Porterfield, the president and CEO of the Aspen Institute. And all right. And we are here with Melanie Lundquist for what I think is going to be a fascinating conversation about philanthropy today and how does a path-breaking philanthropist think about the opportunities, the responsibilities, and the joy to be found through this life-calling endeavor. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Rumor has it that it was easy travel. There were no delays along the way. So we guarantee that to all of our speakers.
It was a little bumpy.
So we've gotten to know each other and become friends. But will you tell this group here a little bit about yourself, how you got started, what motivates you?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm second generation on my mother's side of the family. And I had always heard so much about my grandparents. They immigrated from what is now Poland, from at that time Russia, in the very early 1900s. And they were very involved in the Los Angeles community because right after my mother was born in New Jersey in 1907, they relocated to start a new life in Los Angeles. And my grandfather was a member of the Los Angeles Merchants Association as he was a business owner. And they gave back to the community an awful lot, and they had their sense of responsibility and civic responsibility and compassion because they were so incredibly appreciative to have had the opportunity to come to America. My mother actually started college in 1925 at USC, and she joined a sorority for the purpose of fundraising to establish a dental clinic for impoverished children in Los Angeles. And that dental program still exists today. So from 1920s to 2020, so it's about 100 years old almost. And she just had a wonderful time doing that and was so proud of it. At age 7, I asked if I could have a March Dimes can. And I went door to door and asking for money. I haven't quit asking for money. And, we were taught that you had to have compassion and empathy for those less fortunate than you, and that you had to give back, and you had to uphold your civic responsibility. And in that vein, my mother worked the polls every single election. And of course, she made me go with her, so I would learn that, you vote. And she also was a census poll worker. So every 10 years when the census was done, she was out there taking the census. In fact, small detail, that's how she met my father. She rang the doorbell at their house. So, what motivates me is the urgency to improve so many of the distressing problems that we face in this world and in this country. The lack of equity. Nobody should have to suffer the lack of equity. And the bottom line is that a democracy is what this is about. You get a second, a third, a fourth, if you need a chance. That's how a democracy works. And so the urgency of our problems is definitely what motivates me, and the inequities that we all deal with.
So thank you. So we got to know each other in a kind of an old-fashioned way. Melanie and her husband had made a gift of $25 million to McPherson College in Kansas, which is a small school that has a very, very big impact on its students. And some of you may know I was the president of Franklin and Marshall College before coming here. Similarly, a small school that has really big impact. Highly personalized education. People value each other and connect with each other. So Melanie had written a piece in the publication Inside Higher Ed about why she and her husband made this gift, which is so important, that piece, because we need to make the case for investing in education that is personalized, where the student is seen and valued and cultivated. And we live in an era when that's getting very hard to do. So, so she wrote the article about why they did it, and I'm just sitting at my desk in DC, like, with a slight tear in my eye, thinking this is what it's all about. So I just wrote a note and said, you don't know me and we haven't met, but just a thank you for the gift and for publicizing it, because this will inspire other philanthropists. Next thing I know, Melanie's giving me a call, and so we got to connect with each other that way.
Did.
And then have learned a little more since then. But tell me about that gift and why you and your husband made it.
Well, the good news is, since the publication and since we talked, we have actually increased it to 50 million.
Wow. Wow.
So that's the good news.
Wow.
Our small liberal arts colleges are struggling in this country, and they're closing their doors. And both Richard and I graduated from a large university. I know that both the small schools and the large universities can deliver a very good education. But the experience in the small liberal arts college, the interaction that the students experience in those colleges, it seems to shape their values very differently than what I know from a large university. And so it's incredibly important that we support these small liberal arts colleges. And this was actually our first major investment philanthropically outside of California. And everyone was like, Kansas? And I'd never been to Kansas, and I have to tell you, when I looked out the plane window, I knew it was going to be flat. It's really flat. But we came to know McPherson College through their auto restoration program. It's the only place in the United States where you can receive a 4-year degree in restoration of classic cars, and which is really amazing. And we've known the leadership for well over a decade, and we've gotten to know their programs as well. And their transformative leadership is amazing, because they think in a very transformative frame of mind, and they're very solution-oriented. And one of the reasons for our investment in them is because we like to reward creative, problem-solving innovations, because we need to solve the problems. One example of one of their programs is their student debt project. So what they do is they give each student who is working 25 cents on every dollar the student earns working. And then they also provide them financial literacy education and mentorship. And the end result is many of these students come out with little to no debt. And we all know student debt is a huge, huge problem for our students in this country. And what they have come up with the student debt, it's a model that can be replicated. And again, a model to be replicated are solutions that we really love to support, because every dollar multiplies when it gets replicated elsewhere. And that's just invaluable. I mean, that's when you really call it not a gift, but an investment in humanity. And the president and the provost of the college, they cultivated another donor outside of Kansas. And this donor decided to put up a $500 million double match. And so our 50, I know, it's like, where do we find another one of those? So our $50 million becomes, from the donor, $100 million, And so the total is $150 million for McPherson College. This solidifies them into perpetuity, and they're going to expand to about 2,500 students. So it'll still be a small liberal arts college, but they will have the opportunity to really do more for more students than they've already been doing. Very visionary leadership, very transformative, and really thinks outside the box. They really do. So it's been really, just absolutely an amazing. And he did this last year, and it has to be done by this Friday. And I do believe we're going to make it. So that's really pretty thrilling. And it's, it's the good old business term, ROI, return on investment. Doesn't get any better than that one.
Something I really enjoyed, just sort of a comment, was that you were major donors, but you also are evangelists for the school. You tell the story of the school, which is how other people then realize that there's something going on there that we should learn about. And I think this institution, McPherson, is actually going to set quite a standard for the whole country about how to cultivate growth mindsets in students, because they're learning and working, and it's sequential, and it's adding and adding and adding. And so one of the takeaways of this place is that I'm a learner, I'm a grower. That agility is so essential in this world when every job gets disrupted every couple of years.
No. Actually, the president was a student there, met his wife there, and he's been there now for a little over 20 years. And he's now their president. I love colleges where the students that attended become the presidents. It just gives me shivers. I just think it's so wonderful that that happens.
So now there's another investment I would like to bring up that takes this to another level, I think. So I learned in getting to know Melanie about their investment in what is called the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. And I think your first investment was on the order of $50 million,
Yes.
and then another one in $35 million in 2018. And they have taken the giving pledge, by the way, and we could, think about that. Not every taker of the pledge is a giver yet. You're leading in that community.
We're trying.
And I'll ask Melanie to discuss what this is, the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. But just as a preface, I had the chance to go and visit. Which is my hobby, to go to transformational schools and see what they're doing. And you always leave bigger because you see that what you're doing, what your community's doing, all the partners you have, is really, really important. Another model. So say a little bit about it.
Thank you. And thank you for visiting the school. Everyone really appreciated having you and your team there. And we are looking forward to continuing the collaboration between Aspen Institute and the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools.
The staff of the school, the leaders, the teachers, we're talking the highest level, but you go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, K through 12 education is the foundation for everything, absolutely everything. 85% of our young people, our students in the United States of America, are in traditional K through 12 public schools. Think of it this way. Here's a visual. You're building a house. You put the foundation in first. If you don't, and you add the walls, or you put the walls up first, the walls crumble. That's all there is to it. And democracy is very dependent on a very well-educated, literate society. And we're not doing a very good job on that. Education is a priority for Richard and myself, philanthropically particularly. And by the way, I will mention, and this is another thing that's very unique, there's not another organization doing what the partnership does the way they do it in the US. There's a few that are close, but not the same. Our first investment, as you mentioned, $50 million, that was a 10-year investment. How many philanthropists will make a 10-year investment? Well, the problems we have, we've spent 50 years breaking public education. I've watched it erode since I graduated high school in 1967. And it just keeps eroding and eroding and eroding. And for 20 years, I looked for an organization that actually could do something about this, because I got an excellent education in Los Angeles Unified, and every student deserves the same excellent education that I received. And so we looked and looked, and there was absolutely nothing. So in 2007, we co-founded the partnership with then Mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa. And, we always say that our children are our future, but there's a word omitted there, a crucial word. Our children are our only future. Our only future. There is no future if we don't do this. And we should have started it years ago, but there was nobody to start it. And so we joined forces with Antonio, and he's still to this day involved with the partnership. And it's really amazing. And so we work inside the system. You asked about most people wanting to reform or do things, they work outside the systems. But it's the systems that are broken. So I don't care how much fluff you put on top, it's not going to do anything, because the system itself underneath is broken. And so that's what we need to do. We need to fix the systems. And so we work from the bottom up, the inside out. It's the only way you're going to make the changes. And we do work inside of LAUSD. And we are able to experience firsthand what the problems, the obstacles are. And then we can come up with solutions. Now, here's even more good news. We only spend $850 per year per student in addition to what the state gives us. So it's philanthropic dollars, $850 per year per student to get what we get, which is pretty amazing that we can do it for that kind of money. So it was founded on 3 pillars: capacity, scalability, and sustainability. Well, if the solution costs $5,000 per student, that's not sustainable. And then it will not be a model that can be replicated because it's too expensive. And so we stick to those 3 pillars, and we look for the solutions that will definitely allow us to be that sustainable entity that then can go out, be replicated around the country. And certain aspects of it, which I'll tell you about in a moment, actually are being replicated in California. Public education, that system is the basis for everything that happens in our lives, whether we reach our potential or not, our physical well-being, our mental well-being. The health of every aspect of our lives is influenced by the education we get. And sadly, it's become so broken in this country. We operate on what's called a memorandum of understanding within Los Angeles Unified District. And last year, they go for 5-year terms. That's the max allowed. And last year went before the Board of Education, and it went on the consent calendar, which thrilled us to no end, because it meant no discussions, no objections. And so we sailed right through. And that's a real example of the success. And as you mentioned, after the first 10 years, the second 10 years, we did 35 million. And there's probably going to be a third 10 years. And because it's going to be needed. And our graduation rates have gone from 35% to 88%. And our college admissions have tripled. And we're in the highest poverty areas in the city of Los Angeles. We're in Watts, Boyle Heights, and South LA, for any of you that know LA. And, you know, system change is the most difficult work. And a lot of people shy away from it. And I don't blame them, because it is hard. It's really hard. But it's for the people who really like a good challenge. I happen to be one of those people. So as I mentioned, we've got 20 schools. We have also done a playbook that you can find online, which details a little bit more about how you go about this. I mean, you can't just look at the playbook and then, you know, put it into action. It's not going to work that way. But it's playbook.partnershipla.org. Playbook.partnershipla.org. You know, I could talk about the results, but we'd need to be here till midnight, and I hope you're serving a midnight snack. So let me just give you a few of them. When we started, we realized, because our kids were living in poverty, nobody had ever tested them for the gifted program. Talk about inequity. And so we decided, first opportunity you have is second grade. And at that time, we had 10 schools when we started, and we had about 10,000 students. So we decided we would test all of the second graders that we had, which was about 380 some kids. Cost me $12,000. You're not going to get the gifted services programs if you're not tested and identified. No way. So we did that. What we found was staggering. Staggering. The first year, we found 30% more gifted students in our schools than in the average of all of LA Unified. Second year, 40% difference. So well worth our dollars to test. The second is our work with the Gates Foundation. We are working with the Gates Foundation, and we are changing how math is taught in every single school in LAUSD. And we're hoping to potentially work with the California State Department of Education. I'm not exactly a fan of working with some of those entities, you know, private dollars. We're philanthropists, and we just go do it. It's the old Nike thing, just go do it. You know, stop talking about it, stop researching it, stop studying it, just go do it. And so that has been amazing. Part of the reason for that is the local superintendents. We have 6 in LAUSD that work underneath the superintendent. They came to us and said, "What are you doing? What's your secret sauce? You're beating the district, you're beating the state. What are you doing?" And so we said, well, we'll share our secret sauce. And we have, and it's really been incredible, absolutely incredible. And then the other thing that we did, which we didn't know we were going to have to do and didn't expect to do, but thrilled we did, because, you know, this pandemic pointed out, I think, to all of us in the United States, the inequities that exist, and it really brought even more to the surface how bad they really were. And so superintendent gave them all iPads. That's great. What about the internet connection? Didn't have any. So if you're online learning and you have no internet, well, that's a problem. So the partnership decided we would go work with internet companies and provide very quality broadband to our students' homes. And we became the fiscal sponsor, and we got it done. And then LAUSD looked at what we had done and said, And they went ahead, and now 100,000 families in Los Angeles Unified School District are connected. So that's really, you know, a big deal.
Let me put an exclamation point on this for a second. So we've all heard of public charter schools. Public charter schools work outside of the system.
Thank you.
And the Partnership for LA Schools has chosen to work with and within the system, meaning that the 20 schools, the teachers are hired,
By the district.
By the district. And so this partnership is a new, I would say, labor-intensive effort to drive system change from within the system through the combination of the allocated dollars per student that are public dollars within the philanthropic plus factor.
Right.
And so besides getting very higher results, you're also the almost like the thought partner, the innovation lab for the system, because you pass off what you learn and then it's adopted by the system.
We're the giant lab inside LAUSD. And everything we do, I'll give you another example. We found out principals were not working year round. Okay, teachers don't, we know that, but principals? And so we decided, no. And we told LAUSD, you're going to have to pay them to work year round. You can't just take the same number and divide it in 12. And so our schools, they all work year round. And LAUSD thought, we've got some really low performing schools that might benefit from that too. So some of those schools now have year round principals. And you're right, it's just like a giant lab, and then, nobody's forcing anything. The district can pick and choose whatever they want. And they have been picking and choosing quite a bit, I might say.
This is such a new idea. One of my hopes, Aspen Ideas Festival, this idea takes hold, and the next thing you know, we see partnership for the Brooklyn schools, partnership for the Baltimore schools, and on and on.
We actually have had a couple of different school districts from around the country that have asked us to step in. But at that time, we were relatively new, and we were a little concerned about diluting our home team to do that. I think there's more opportunity now, and I think more organizations are going to be stepping up with us.
So we have, we'll get to questions in a moment. We have about 10 minutes for a couple other questions, and I'd like to, you can see I've been widening the aperture here. So now we're going to widen it yet again, because you and Richard have chosen a few other areas.
Right.
In addition to education, news literacy, climate mitigation. And I guess my question is there a through line in your philanthropy as you look at different issues? But yet do you see, is there something for you that pulls this together?
There is, definitely. Solving the basic problems is what drives a thriving civilization. And public education, as I've described, we also support News Literacy Project, which is something that addresses media literacy and working to save democracy, because we know there's so many falsehoods out there. The climate crisis, we all know that is dire and we need solutions right now. If you do things privately by philanthropic dollars, you can get them done much more effectively and much more efficiently. The way we go about things with our philanthropy is ways others may not really feel particularly comfortable. But we're not risk adverse, and I'm a proud disruptor. Not everybody wants to be that. And we make big bets and try to lead by example by making those big bets. I actually want to disrupt systems like the partnership and like Alta Sea down at the Port of Los Angeles, where we're working on climate solutions through the oceans and working on the blue economy and the opportunities that our young people will have for jobs in the blue economy. We support the visionary leaders and the institutions that they run, and the more visionary and problem-solving they are, the better we like them. And we have to do this to save democracy and save our planet. Thank you.
So do you have a theory of philanthropy? I mean, maybe it's emerged over your years.
It has.
Yeah.
It has. Well, when I was growing up, public dollars covered absolutely everything. I mean, no doubt about it. So philanthropy provided the extras, wonderful extras. And today, we have a lot of holes in the dam. We have sprung so many leaks. And on the Chronicle of Philanthropy, October 2019, can philanthropy save democracy? Can everybody see it? And my answer is an absolute yes. Yes, yes. Because philanthropy now has a bigger and much more different role than it ever had before. Much different and much bigger. And, you know, I think that, I must say I pride myself that I'm as old as I am and grew up when I grew up, and I still get that today. It needs to be different. You know, to mitigate risks, I think one of the first ones is due diligence. We do our due diligence in spades. We want to know what the goals are of the organization. We want to know what we plan out metrics that have to be met or goals that have to be met for the year. Now, if they're not met, next year's funding isn't going to show up unless there's a really good reason, like maybe the pandemic. So it's really important that you know what the metrics are that the organization is using so that you hold them accountable. You know, I mean, philanthropists, it's a business. You've got to hold these organizations accountable. It's very easy not to, but the other thing is, I'm involved on the ground, and Richard is as well, not just the boardroom. And I think it's extremely meaningful for the recipients of your investments to understand and see you and understand that you think they're worthy of your investments. And it means a great deal to them. I mean, more than you can possibly imagine. I spend time in our schools and with the kids, teachers, parents, principals, whatever. And it's really, really wonderful and so much fun. And when you're on the ground and you see the successes, you get to share in the successes. And there's nothing more fulfilling and joyful than sharing in those successes. And the kids I know in particular, they haven't really had people believe in them that much. And so for them, you're looking them in the eye and saying, some kids in schools have come up to me and said, why are you doing this? They're like really suspicious. And I've just eyeball to eyeball, because I believe in you. And they're like, nobody else has ever said that to us before. And my response has always been, well, then let me apologize for all those people who should have said it to you and didn't, because it actually makes me somewhat angry.
Well, something I really enjoyed in visiting was seeing the dynamic of you with the curriculum specialists, the teachers. We were walking around in different classrooms, and the teachers all know you, and the students know you. And we're sitting around in a little cafeteria or meeting room with our plastic plates, having rice and bean lunch real fast, and you're just in it. You're not outside.
Oh yeah,
of
I'm
it.
in it.
You're just in it.
I'm in it to win it.
Yeah, exactly. So some have thought of you and referred to you as an activist philanthropist. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
That means that I don't mail in the check on my way to the spot. You know, I'm very engaged with the students. As I mentioned earlier, I spend time with the students, the parents, the teachers, the principals. I go to their college graduations. They invite me to their college. One's already called me for next May and said, would you come to my, he's in Connecticut, and he said, would you come to my college graduation? And I said, well, of course I will. And he said, you will. And so I've been to Harvard and Stanford and Chapman and several other places. It's, you know. I also have chosen to raise millions of dollars sharing and co-chairing very, very large, hundreds of millions of dollars of money for organizations. And Laura Turner Seidel and I convened a group in Atlanta in May and last month. And we had Bridge Band and some Giving Pledge members and you guys and some EPA folks. And we talked about solutions to climate change. And that was very rewarding too. You know, I think one of the biggest problems is we're always talking to like-minded people. And I know it's difficult to talk to people that we think we're gonna probably come to blows with, but, you know. But to really, really do effective philanthropy, I believe you have to be an activist philanthropist. I really think you have to be involved on the ground. And it's so joyful. I mean, these kids and the people that are recipients of your investment, they've never met people like us, you know, they really haven't. In fact, they all thought I grew up really rich. I said, no, actually, I kind of grew up more like you.
So let me open it up. We have about 10 minutes
Okay.
for questions. So I'm going to propose slightly shorter questions, and then we'll get more questions.
Okay, good.
So let me start right here on the left, you, and then right behind you, and then we'll move around.
Have you or your organization considered funding teacher training better and more so that the teachers know how to treat these children, and as well as having methods to use with the children that work and have been scientifically vetted?
That's a great question. I have my own personal feelings about teacher training in this country. What the partnership does, in LAUSD, for example, when I was growing up, and there, my teachers in elementary school had 2 days a month for professional development. Today, it's more like 2 days a year. And so the partnership provides an enormous amount of support, resources, and professional development to the teachers, because you can't hand them a new curriculum and say, here's the textbook, here's the training manual, go for it. It doesn't work that way. So that is incredibly important. That's one of the real strongholds of the partnership. We've identified teachers on each campus that are really good at what they do, and they are there every day, and they are there to deal with any questions or concerns the teachers have or any problems the teachers need to have solved. Because LAUSD cannot afford to hire a substitute to come in 2 days a month for every teacher. It'd be another $1 billion in the budget. And so they can't afford it. And so again, it goes back to what I said earlier about coming up with solutions that are sustainable.
Yeah, I met the curriculum leader in the schools the day I visited. I don't remember his name now, but it was both on the curriculum and the delivery of it. I was blown away by him. I was like, whoa.
Ian.
Yeah.
Ian.
Like he really, you have to meet him to believe it. He's probably 33 or something. He's brilliant. Okay, next question.
Hi, thank you for including education, because as the person who established the Institute of Literacy years ago, 80% of children read on grade level. Today, I just went to the NIH, it's 30%. So we are going to lose our democracy. One thing we emphasize is we train the teachers in phonological foundation, because you've got 8th graders who don't know their alphabet. It's very systemic. And since we're social impact, when we train, we give free coaching and free follow-up so we can have sustainability.
Right.
Do you have science of reading training going on in your?
Our language arts, our math and our language arts are our primary focuses to some degree. And we are, LAUSD has now adopted the curriculum that the partnership has been using in math, and we're moving towards that in English language arts as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Because, the math scores improve when we get them reading. Math is
Absolutely,
reading
they're
today.
hand in hand, hand in hand. If you can't read, you're.
Well, I commend you because we started with philanthropy from 2 schools in New York City, and now we're helping schools all over, in districts all over the United States. In Detroit, the superintendent became superintendent of the year because we don't just give materials, we give training.
Right.
And now everybody's saying phonics and science of reading because we had 16 years of no phonics, but they're still just buying products, and it really upsets me.
I know.
But thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Next question, all the way, you, sir. Making it tough on the mic runner.
Appreciate it. So you were talking about how philanthropy is essentially investing. If you were to go onto the stock market, you could look at returns from the past. You could look at
Right.
different analysis that people had done of these specific companies. But when it comes to charities, that's not something that we can really do. We have stuff like Charity Navigator, but how can we make it so that when someone is looking at giving, right? Because it's great to give, but it's much more important to give effectively, right? You're
Right.
talking about it's $850 to make it so the student can be educated for the year. Maybe somewhere else it's $1,500, maybe somewhere else it's $200. How can we make sure that when people are giving, that they're giving effectively and making sure that we're sharing resources properly so when someone wants to give a large gift, it's doing the right thing, it's going to the right place, especially when someone like you or others have already done the work of analyzing what it takes to make the impact.
That goes back to the due diligence, and really, before we invested in the partnership, we spent 9 months on due diligence with them. And at that time, LAUSD had 700,000 kids in it. I don't happen to have any children of my own. And I said that to somebody, they said, oh, but you adopted 700,000. And I said, yeah, Guinness Book of World Records, 9 months, and I gave birth to 700,000 kids. This is good. No, it goes back to the due diligence. You want to know the leadership of the organizations. You want to know their financial stability. You want to know the employment history of the team members. Is it a revolving door? Because every time somebody new comes in, you start all over again. So is it this revolving door? We're very lucky. The partnership, we had our first founding CEO for 6 years, and now we have our next CEO. She's been there 10 years, and she's actually just getting ready to move on. And we're in the search for a new CEO. But it'll be a very, very difficult one, I'm sure, because it's going to be hard shoes to fill. But it's the due diligence that you do, and look at the metrics, look at what they've accomplished. And if necessary, see, I don't happen to think that Charity Navigator, some of the others, go deep enough. And so I don't think it represents something. And if you're going to make that big bet, you really got to know the organization. We knew McPherson people for over a decade before we did this. And we know their thinking, and we know how visionary they are. And I think that's really important. A lot of times people say, if you're going to make a big bet on an organization, or even one that's not so big, sit on their board for a year. Well, I have to admit, I haven't done that, but I get really up close and personal with the organization, the people running it, and I look at everything. And your agreements have to be very tight, and you have to stick to them.
All the way back, all the way, yes, all the way back, and then we'll go right up in front to the, yes, and so there.
Thank you. You mentioned sustainability a couple of times, and as a COO, CFO of multiple educational organizations, that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Philanthropy has done amazing things, and I appreciate your outlook on the next 10 years and how many more great things can happen. But what does sustainability look like for organizations that are on the ground long term? And what role do you think philanthropy can play in focusing more on pushing for more civic infrastructures that are embedded in the way that current resources, which there are many of, are being targeted or not targeted in ways that are achieving the same results that you've talked about in this partnership?
Well, the sustainability piece is probably the most important because that's what makes your investment your investment. It goes to also that the leadership and how long they've been there and how long they're going to stay. And yes, the partnership is fully funded by all philanthropic dollars, which I think is really important. When we look at a solution, we've looked at solutions for certain problems, like how do we bring teachers up to speed on the new math curriculum that we're using in LAUSD, that we've gotten the rest of LAUSD to embrace. How do we do that? And so we came up with a model, and LAUSD has asked us to help them with that model. And we came up with several solutions, but I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, there was one solution was $5,000 per student per year. That is not sustainable. But and this goes back to our philosophy of philanthropy. We like to invest in those people that have the innovation, the creativity, and come up with these solutions that are sustainable. But at the same time, they have to fit within the framework of getting the job done. So the sustainability is just a really major, major piece. And, sometimes, I've said this many times, I think in this world, we've gotten to the point where we look for solutions that are the most complex and the most complicated, and then we can't implement any of them. And we sit there and say, well, that's too hard, that's too complex. Changing a system like we're trying to do and doing is the hardest work. But usually the simple solutions are staring you in the face, but we walk right past those. And we go to the most complex and complicated. And then people say, well, we can't afford it, we can't do it, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the manpower, what are we going to do? So that's our job in the partnership.
I think that word partnership is so important, forming the right one.
It is. I mean, the people on our team, we have 95 approximately home staff team, and they're all there because this is a legacy job. People are doing something that can really go out there and do so much. And so many of our team members, they could be out in the private sector making 10 times what they're making with us, but they don't want to. The academic, chief of academics that you were in, he's one of them. I mean,
yeah, he surely.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good.
We have time for one more question.
Great. Hello, my name is Jaleesa Hall. I'm an Aspen Festival Fellow, but I'm also a DC nonprofiteer, so happy to be here. The question that I had really is based off of what you just said about your 3 pillars of capacity, scalability, and sustainability, that you're really looking for organizations who can get the job done. Speaking about philanthropy more broadly, how are private foundations thinking about particularly BIPOC-led nonprofit leaders who are proximate to the issue, who are creative, who are innovative, but don't have the capacity or the means to be able, or the social capital to be able to continue to sustain their efforts? What can private foundations do to get them to a place where we can have we can meet those 3 pillars that you're talking about?
Well, the education and awareness of the general public, foundations included, is probably one of the hardest jobs. We're not that aware of so many things. And I'm not so sure I have a really great answer for that question because I believe it's an educational awareness issue. And I think one thing that I work with a lot of other nonprofits, nonprofits that we support plus others, just as a thought partner with them. And I always say, every nonprofit has a great story, a unique story. I have found that nonprofits do not tell their stories. Or if they do, they don't tell them well. And they're unique. Each one is unique. That's one thing. And the other thing I think is that I think nonprofits need to look at all the bases they're really covering. So the partnership is not just about education. It's about equity, it's about mental health, physical health, and all the tangents that you can think of that come into play for the organization. The more you can think of, they're like tentacles. That gives you that many more buckets to go to foundations whose mission those buckets fit. And I think that nonprofits really limit themselves by saying, well, yeah, you know, our goal is, our mission is. And then they just stick to that very narrow mission. But it's about so much more. So much more.
One thing that can work too, from the Aspen way of doing things, is we have a number of programs that are on the ground in community, in addition to doing mass spectacles like this one. And our on the ground in community work is always with partners, and we actually are a funder of many on the ground in community BIPOC-led organizations. Steve Ballmer made an investment in $10 million for us to then invest in more than 40 organizations, very small, working to help opportunity youth move into work or school. And then our Community College Excellence Program has similarly, every year we distribute resources to top performing community colleges and help them get there. And so that's the other possibility for you to think about, is how can you join networks that might be supported in the way that Aspen is, you know, the intermediary between the funder and the on-the-ground work.
The Bombers are also supporters of the partnership, big supporters.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. Can we ask one more question? I know she really
Yes,
wanted
we
to ask
can.
it.
I'm so interested in your work with the school district. So interested in your work with the school district. How do you interact with the teacher unions?
Good question.
Oh, boy. I was hoping that question wasn't going to come up. Well, you know what? I've always supported unions. I get it. I will answer that by saying this. Not just the unions, but people in general don't want the status quo disrupted. You know, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And teachers said to us, you know, we've been promised things by so many people for so many years and nobody's delivered. Why should we believe in you? But then they said, well, nobody else has delivered and we're not doing so well now. Maybe we should just try it. And they decided, they tried it. It was like, you know, get Mikey, he'll try it and he'll like it. Well, we got Mikey and they tried it and they liked it. As I mentioned earlier, 5-year renewal on the consent calendar, no discussion, no objections. I'm sure if the unions felt that they could play a role in discussing it or objecting to it, I'm sure they would have been there. And they were not. And United Teachers Los Angeles is extremely strong, extremely strong.
Speaks to the power of partnership.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I hope that you all enjoyed this chance to meet Melanie and hear some of her ideas about philanthropy. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Amazing experience.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.